We just built this 2,500 square foot home in 4 days, and it all started with the timber frame. All right, so this is the building in the correct orientation. So what I thought we would do is start by putting together this bent down at the far end, but also simultaneously we can be assembling this 50-footer and this 50-footer. So this is a single-story build for a couple that's looking to retire into it.
This is a 50-foot by 50-foot timber frame with a 512 roof pitch, 2 timber frame covered porches. Case and I collaborate on the design. Once the cut sheets are produced, then the cut sheets go out to the shop to Gabe to commence cutting.
I've been told Douglas Fir is pound for pound stronger than steel, which is pretty cool. Fun part is then when you go back to white pine, that's so soft, like after cutting this, it's like butter.
After about 1,000 hours of careful cutting of this Doug Fir timber frame in the shop, we showed up with a timber frame on the back of our truck. The job site is a little bit tricky. It's quite narrow. It also has a very steep slope leading down to the water. So this project, size-wise, was ambitious for the lot. What I'd like to do is get a chalk line snapped for these guys and across here, so we know exactly where these post bases will live.
Are you gonna swing stuff right onto here?
In a bit. I want to
make sure
leave this completely free so you guys can get everything snapped off and marked out.
I believe I have perfect dunnage placement.
Congratulations, bud. Nice man. So this building is unique in that it has a row of bents that run down the middle. But then it also has 2 walls, one on each side of the building. So throughout the day, we had one group working on assembling the wall that runs parallel to the ridge, and then also a crew was working on assembling those bents that run perpendicular to the ridge. The walls were actually 50 feet long. That's a pretty long pick. Utilized a slight variation on our typical scarf joint.
It's really hard to come by trees that big in the quality and the size that we need for the timber. So we use scarfs to splice 2 timbers together so we can have a piece long enough to span that distance.
So the scarf joint we have is a wedged, under-squinted scarf. Sorry. A wedged, under-squinted, shelved table.
Wedged, under-squinted,
splayed table scarf joint. Dude, this is tough. This is a wedged, tabled scarf joint. The way it drives is it tightens up by using 2 wedges, and those drive together, forcing these together. We'll put fasteners in the top side just to kind of lock everything in, but the wedges will drive it to its final destination. Our normal scarf joint that we typically do has a post underneath with offset tenons, and that's usually the thing that drives them together, but because this is spanning, it's getting driven together with the wedges.
What we like to do when we're assembling bents is apply enough heat using a ratchet strap or a steel cable puller to actually compress the side grain of the beam with the end grain of the post. So in order to do that, we have to have something that applies thousands of pounds of force to get a little bit of compression of this side grain. The reason we need to get compression is that this wood is green, it's going to shrink. If we just put the thing together so the 2 elements are just touching, when this shrinks, it's going to pull away from the post and we'll end up with a gap here. If we can force some compression of that side grain, as the excess moisture leaves, it's not able to pull away. So in 2 years, when everything is fully dry, we still have a nice tight joint.
So we use a come along in conjunction with the ratchet straps. Oftentimes we're trying to span a greater distance than the ratchet straps we use are able to. So we're able to run straps on the outside of bents and then attach it with a come along and draw it together. We just find that the come along is able to put out more compression on joinery than a ratchet strap is, largely because you're using leverage to your advantage. You have a long piece that you're using to move the come along, whereas ratchet straps, you're using a little hand crank system. So they're both great. We like using them together on our joinery.
So once we've put all the pieces together, we have holes pre-drilled on the post where the mortise lives, but not on the tenon of the brace. So now I'm just gonna let this hole that we pre-drilled guide this auger bit. I'm just gonna punch that through the brace. Essentially what we're doing is we're applying a bunch of pressure with this strap, and then we're gonna use the peg to lock it in place while it's tight.
God, it's so embarrassing.
So the first thing that we're doing on this job site is raising the bents that go down the center bay right here. And once those are up, we'll raise the 50-foot outer wall bents and then connect them with beams and rafters.
I guess what we could do is stand this guy up and do another set of brace boards.
Yeah, and then we can build this.
One issue came up around floor plan design. The kitchen is in this area right behind me, and there was one post that landed in a very inconvenient place in the kitchen. So we basically eliminated that post. And so instead of short joist, post, short joist, we now have a void of posts, and we're putting a much heavier beam that will span all the way across. And we're actually creating a parallel cord truss above that area to eliminate the post.
I'm in.
Can you push that out a little further on the board, Russell?
Yep. Get a little sludgy.
Yeah, they're right there. Yeah. Yeah.
I would drive your GRK and
Go in. Like this. Ready?
Gee, thanks guys.
I think that's lighter than that joist, the pine joist from the last class.
Probably, those things were ridiculous.
Happy.
One thing we noticed is that this load of Douglas fir took on a lot of character between when we cut it and today when we went to put it together. Much more so than eastern white pine typically does, and honestly much more so than Douglas fir typically does. Almost every piece had a unique twist to it. Not sure why that is. It was stacked in our shop flat. Could be that this batch of timbers came from a very windy job site. They grow in an area that's very windy. The tree is constantly flexing. That manifests itself in twisting of the timbers. All that means is that we spent a little more time on every single joint, getting things to come together, getting them tight. There was a little more work required than typical. Once we got the bents all assembled down the center and raised, we started raising the two side walls. And then there were just a few simple connecting girts that tied the walls to the bents.
Whenever you want to grab it, you can.
And come down a little bit. Perfect, keep going down. Keep coming down.
Yeah, we're in, Mitchell. Keep going.
You're basically there.
We might also be able to put the vacuum.
So on this bent, we have a joist pocket, but it's notched out so that way it can actually take the joist that's going to connect our outside bent. The very end joist that's there has another sloping notch into it, and that's going to actually take the outside rafter. So the end rafter is actually going to sit nice and flush within that little bend that we have on that upper joist there.
When we arrive at the site, we have a crew between 6 and 9 people. Everyone is on their A game, and if we discover an issue, something needs to be refined or there's an actual mistake, now we have somewhere between 5 and 8 people standing around while 1 or 2 people work on fixing that problem. So it can be a real speed bump in the progress of the build. So we take our time back at the shop so that when we're out here, things go smoothly. We talk a lot about the 110-100 rule. A minute during design takes 10 minutes to correct during fabrication. It takes 100 minutes to correct when we're out here on site actually building the building. You want to leverage the design time and the manufacturing time to save time out here on the site.
Kind of needs to swing out that way a little bit.
Can you tap yours down anymore, Gabe?
There you go, yep. There it is.
Beautiful.
There you go.
All right, we're at the end of day 1 on this build. You can see behind me what we got accomplished. Everything is now in place. All the timber that we brought is actually installed. Despite a few setbacks and very cold weather, we managed to do exactly what we thought we would. The only thing missing from the building right now are the rafters. We left all of the rafters loaded on the other truck back at the shop. It's a tricky site to get into, so I didn't want to come in extremely heavily loaded. So we left that part of the build back at the shop, and we'll bring that in tomorrow. And we hope to wrap up the timber frame tomorrow.